And then okay. And so let's go this go here. I mean, I have added an additional file which specifically serves as a, you know, quick study notes. I don't know why it's not opening. Yeah, it should. Because some of you are asking, I mean, you wanted some pointed guidance as far as the book is concerned. So this particular file gives you that pointed guidance. I don't know why it's not opening, but I hope it does. Yeah, it does. Okay. So basically, I summarized the content that you are supposed to learn for the test and some of the exercise problems that you should practice. Okay. All right. And this is from the book that is already uploaded to the class folder. I mean, there is a folder named Axler. The book is already uploaded there. So if I go back and look at the class 5 folder, so see that. So these are Access presentations. So if you want to, here is the book. Okay. All right. I should be able to. Just share with everyone. I don't have a song. Anyway, I think then the recording. It's acting up the folder, but anyway, fine, whatever. So, I mean, let's begin with. I think there is one thing that I wanted to talk, which is that the problem that I asked you to solve as part of the homework assignment, right? And most of you turned it in, and I think most of your solutions are correct. But what I was looking for is actually an elegant solution. So I'll just try to solve this. I'll solve this in class so that you sort of know what kind of, I mean, how I think, right? I mean, or how I approach problems like this. So this was the problem, right? That V1 through Vn is linearly independent, correct? And there is a vector W that belongs to this vector space. And these guys are also, all of these guys are in the vector space V. So prove that if V1 plus W Vn plus W is a linearly dependent set, then W is in the span of I mean, intuitively it makes sense, right? I mean, it's obviously, I mean, it sounds obvious, but I mean, how do we actually show that this is true? So what we know is that this set of vectors, V1 to Vn, is a linearly independent set of vectors. But this set of vectors, V1 plus W all the way up to Vn plus W is not. They are actually a linearly dependent set of vectors, right? So let's begin with that. So we say that, I mean, this set V1 plus W, Vn plus W is linearly dependent. What does it mean, guys? What does it mean? Anyone? Nobody?
Dimension is less than n.
That there exist scalars a1 to an such that a1 into v1 plus w dot 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 an into vn plus w equals to 0,
Right.
where not all ai's are 0.
Correct. Very good. So there exist scalars. So that means there exist scalars a1 to an, not all equal to 0, such that I mean, if A1 through AN are all 0 and this relation is also true, then this set V1 plus W, V2 plus W, all the way up to Vn plus W will be linearly independent, right? But it's not, because we know that V1 plus W through Vn plus W, this particular set is a linearly dependent set. So if you cook up a linear combination of all of these vectors, then there must be some scalars which you have used to cook up this combination. There must be some scalars, and at least one of those scalars have to be non-zero. Correct? Okay. All right. Very good. Now, what does this imply? It implies the following, that we have, I can just rearrange this A1 V1 plus A2 V2 AN Vn, and I can write this as correct. Okay, now I know that all A1 to AN are not equal to 0. Okay, so what does this imply? I also know that V1 to Vn is a linearly independent set. Okay.
So left hand side cannot be 0.
Okay, which means
RHS is also not zero. Means
okay, which means
W is not zero.
no, W is a non-trivial vector, right? I mean, remember all of this cycle. W is a non-trivial vector, right? Okay. I mean, whenever I say, because I'm not, whenever I say that W is a vector is B, I mean a non-trivial vector. So W cannot be 0 anyway. So what must be 0? I mean, so W cannot be 0. So what you are saying is the left-hand side cannot be 0, right?
Sir, the sigma AIs will not be 0.
Correct. So that
So
means
we
the
can,
right-hand side is also not 0, correct? If the
yes,
left-hand side is not 0, the right-hand side is also not 0. And I know that W is not 0, correct? And so therefore, what I know is this A1 plus AN is also not zero. Correct? Okay, right? And so therefore, what I can do is I can simply write W as minus A1 by plus, let me just write it this way, minus A2 by okay. So what and so I could have written this anyway, but in order that this expression holds, this expression makes sense, it was very, very important to realize that the denominator is non-zero. Because if the denominator is zero, then this expression will not make sense. Now, since the denominator is non-zero, right, and we also know that some of these A1 to ANs are not zero, then that means that this implies that W will be in the span of V1 to Vn. So that's it. I mean, so most of your proofs, I mean, what you have done, and once again saying that it's correct, but it actually was like a page long. For some of you guys, it was like you went over a page, right? So I think at some point of time, some of you actually went back to a circular logic. Okay, so this is an elegant proof. This is what I call as an elegant proof. Okay, and this is one skill that I wish you learned. Okay, all right. So I'm saying this. Okay, so if I have to refresh your memory, I think there is one page that I have already uploaded, or I mean, in the review folder, which is, I mean, what you need to know, basically, what a vector space is, right? And what exactly is a vector space? What exactly is a vector space? I mean, you don't have to search for the exact definition. Set of vectors following a bunch of axioms, right? And set of column vectors. Set of column vectors following a bunch of axioms, which includes additivity, scalar multiplication, existence of an additive inverse, existence of a multiplicative inverse. Because, I mean, vector spaces is where you define vectors. Not only vectors, you also define matrices. Not only that, you also define multiplication of matrices and multiplication of a vector with a matrix, right? You are able to define all of that, okay? And by virtue of defining all of that, you essentially map a system solution of a system of equations in a vector space. You expect that the solution has a null space, correct? Okay. So therefore, I mean, you have to sort of follow some of the standard algebra that applies to real numbers anyway, okay? So all those bunch of axioms. However, I mean, there is also the subspaces of vector spaces. So if you have to show that a certain vector space is a subspace of another vector space, you really do not need to go through all of those same axioms. Actually, two are enough, which is, I mean, you pick any two elements from the subspace and they should satisfy the additive closure. You pick a scalar from the subspace and multiply any vectors with that vector from the subspace, right? And then the product should also belong to the subspace. If these two properties are, of course, the subspace also needs to be non-empty. Because, I mean, we know that for every vector space, the empty subspace is a non-trivial subspace. So we are not interested in the non-trivial subspaces. I mean, we are not interested in the trivial subspaces, I'm sorry. We are interested in the non-trivial subspaces. So therefore, we would actually look for vector spaces or subspaces of vector spaces which contain vectors other than the zero vector, right? So this is what I've, and we are also interested in this particular course. We are primarily interested in finite dimensional vector spaces, which means we should be able to count the length of the vectors, maximum number of vectors that a vector space can contain. Okay, right? Because matrices are also finite dimensional. So in order to do that, we did a bunch of things which are basis, right? So because the length of the basis vector is nothing but the dimension of your vector space. So what guarantees that a vector space has a basis vector? I mean, there has to be a set of vectors which will span the vector space, and those set of vectors should be linearly independent. If both of these conditions are satisfied, then we say that particular vector space has a basis, and we count the number of vectors in that basis, and that gives us the dimension of the vector space, finite dimensional vector space. Okay, all right. And I am sure that you know the definition of linear independence and definition of linear dependence, right? And those are really, really important, right? And we also, then one of the things that we use to map between matrices and linear transformations is that has matrices and vector spaces in particular, is that we have a tool called linear transformation. We use that tool to map matrices to vector spaces. Because the other properties are inherited. Okay, other than these two properties, the rest of the 8 properties are inherited, because the subspace that you are considering is a non-empty subset also. Okay. All right. Okay. So before that, so this is what we know about vector spaces. Now, once again, in order to understand solutions to differential equations and other things, we need to also abstractize ourselves the concepts of a null space, concepts of a range, because typically when you did matrix algebra in your earlier semesters, you computed ranks of matrices, right? And the rank of the matrix usually tells you whether the solution has an inverse and so on and so forth. Correct? Okay. So therefore, that's another thing that we need to understand, that the rank and the nullity of a vector space, because both, when you have a transformation, linear transformation as such, when you have a linear transformation, right, from one finite dimensional vector space to another finite dimensional vector space, I mean, you would need to understand what your null space of T contains, right? And you also need to understand what your range of T contains. So a T is nothing but T is nothing but a linear transformation, right? And T satisfies this property that alpha u plus beta v is nothing but where your u's and v's are taken from a vector space T, and alpha betas are nothing but scalars, right? So your linear transformation essentially does, it just plays the role of a function, very, very specific function, which takes your elements from one vector space and maps it onto the other. This is exactly how it creates a matrix, right? So when you have a linear transformation from one vector space to another vector space, where both m and n are finite dimensional, then you actually get a matrix, right? You actually get a matrix of size n by n. Okay, all right, and you should be able to compute the rank of such matrix, right? So rank of A, right? Okay, and null space of A, which is equivalent to, range of the linear transformation T and the null space of the linear transformation. So this is the equivalence that we have tried so hard, painstakingly to establish. Okay, all right. And then there are inner products, and then there are eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Okay, and as I said, I do not encourage computing eigenvalues using determinants and matrices, right? I mean, so in fact, you can straight away get a characteristic polynomial from an eigenvalue. So let's take an example from eigenvalues. Okay, I think I have one here. So yeah, okay. So I mean, what we know is that an eigenvalue eigenvector must satisfy this equation, and we have spoken at length regarding the geometry of such a transformation, right? You know that it's just a scalar multiplication of a vector, which means you are scaling it, but you are scaling it in a direction by not allowing these vectors to fall off the span, okay, of the vector space, right? And now, I mean, it's very, very simple that if I want to take a look at this, right, T square of B, what it entails. The T square of B is nothing but T of TV, and we know that T is nothing but lambda V, right? And so therefore we scale it back to lambda of TV, and then this guy is nothing but lambda V, so you multiply this and you get lambda squared, right? So as long as your linear transformation, your transformation is linear, I mean you raise it to any power, you can correspondingly express it in terms of the power of the scalar. Okay, all right. So if I have a characteristic polynomial which is given in this manner, T cube plus 2t square minus t minus 2I equal to 0. Okay, so I give you a characteristic polynomial, and what I ask you to do is show that this guy, show that he is diagonalizable. This is a nice property, guys, and you know that we have exploited this property to explain and understand how principal component analysis and singular value decomposition, very powerful techniques used in machine learning, works, right? But how do I do this? Okay, I mean, if I give you a characteristic polynomial like this, you actually have no way of constructing the matrix directly, right? So what you can do is, this is the characteristic polynomial, right? So which means that this must satisfy so if you operate this on a non-trivial vector, nothing changes, right? Okay, but you can look at this because it's a linear transformation, right? So this addition is distributive, which means what? I can write this as t cube of v plus 2t square of v minus t of v minus 2I of v, correct? Okay, and by the previous property that we have established, I can rewrite this t cube of v as lambda cube of v, right? So therefore, I can write this as lambda cube of v plus 2 lambda square of v minus lambda v, right, minus 2 lambda, I mean, minus 2 equal to v, right? I should just write it as minus 2I, correct? 2I equal to 0. Okay. Now, what we can do is, from this, we can easily factorize this. You see that we take lambda square, right? And this will be lambda plus 2 and v minus, also there is a v here, I missed a v, sorry. So there is another v, and then there is this lambda plus this. Okay. So if you further factorize this, what you get is lambda plus 2 times lambda squared minus 1 times v equal to 0. You factorize this further, you get the lambda values as okay. So what do you have three eigenvalues arising out of this characteristic polynomial, right? And all of those eigenvalues are real and distinct from each other. Now, since the eigenvalues are real and distinct, the corresponding linear transformation can be diagonalized. Okay, so which means I should be able to express this transformation T in terms of another transformation T inverse times the diagonal matrix times T. Now, what will be the elements of this diagonal matrix? The elements of this diagonal matrix are nothing but -2, 1, and okay. All right. Okay. So here is a way to compute eigenvalues without actually going back and constructing the matrix again. Okay? There is no need. There is no need to take the determinant and whatever. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think. So once again, I'll just. In fact, I have uploaded everything that you need to study. So just to be sure, I mean, you should know what a linear transformation is, what a vector space is, what is linear independence, linear dependence, span, range, null space, okay, characteristic polynomial, eigenvalues, eigenvectors, inner product, the basic definition of inner product. What do you mean by finite dimensional vector spaces? How do we compute the basis of a vector space? How do you compute the basis of a null space? How do you compute the basis of a range, which is nothing but the rank, right? What are the implications of certain results? Like, for example, if there is a rank nullity theorem, which means there is a linear transformation that goes from a finite dimensional vector space to another vector space, then dimension of the vector space V is equal to dimension of the null space of T plus the dimension of the range of T, right? And this has a number of implications in systems of equations, invertible transformations, so on and so forth. Okay, all right. Then there are some other important results, right? When your eigenvalues of a transformation are real and distinct, the corresponding eigenvectors are orthogonal. A set of orthogonal vectors is also linearly independent, right? Okay. Similarity transformations have same eigenvalues, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. So these are bunch of things. In fact, and if you go through the snapshots and the summary notes that I have uploaded, you will have a pretty good idea of, I mean, what I expect from you as far as the test is concerned. All right. Let me quickly go through this. We are good. Okay. I'll probably take another example and show you. Yeah. Okay. Let me. Okay. So let's say I have a transformation which is given in the following manner. Guys, can you tell me what this transformation signifies? Just a quick thought. What does this entail?
Maybe multiplying a complex number with I.
Geometrically.
Rotation.
Yeah, rotation. Do you know at of what degree?
180.
90.
How do you say that?
90.
Why? Why?
Like if you write it in components with the sine theta, cos theta, the thing that solves it would be pi by 2.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now, if I ask you, find me the eigenvalues of this guy.
Sir,
How are
before
you going to do it?
one doubt, how do you, what is the meaning of two elements in a transformation like T of W comma Z?
This is just a column vector, no?
Okay, W and Z are the parts of, okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of writing TV equal to, see, when you write TV equal to lambda V, what do you actually want to write? Your V is a column vector of any dimension, right? I mean, it could be 10 by 1, 100 by 1. But you really do not want to write it in a nasty manner. So that's a TV equal to lambda V is a compact representation, right? But let's say I have this. Yeah, I have this. So how do we compute the eigenvalues without shifting it to a metric form? So TV equal to lambda V. TV equal to lambda V, right? So therefore, in this particular case, can I not write it as lambda WV? Yeah, right. Because your V represents the column vector W comma Z. So I mean, and in an eigenvector representation, your linear transformation gets replaced by the scalar lambda, right? That is exactly what it is. So therefore, I can write this as lambda and then things turn easy, right? Because I can then equate, both of these are column vectors, so I can just equate component wise, right? So this is lambda W is equal to minus Z, and lambda Z is equal to W. Am I correct? Lambda W is equal to, yeah. Okay. So what this implies is now what I can do is I can simply multiply these two equations. If I multiply these equations, I get lambda square omega Z equal to minus omega Z. Because omega and Z are scalars, right? I mean, when you write it as a omega comma Z as an ordered pair, it becomes a column vector, right? And as I said, we always work with non-trivial vectors. So we know that, so this is like nothing but lambda square plus 1 times omega Z equal to 0. Now, since this guy cannot be 0 because individual guys are non-zero, the only option that I have is lambda square plus 1 equal to 0. This comes from the same theorem that we proved, right? I have shown you that why does determinant of T minus lambda I make sense, right? From the argument of rank nullity theorem and from the argument of null space. But if you solve this, we do not have solutions on the real space, right? So your eigenvalues are complex. Okay. All right. Okay. So anyway, I think I have said enough whatever I had to say, right? I mean, don't panic. Let me tell you one thing. Don't panic. Let me also tell you a couple of things that I always follow. It's a standard protocol that I have been following for the last 17 years. I started teaching in 2003. Okay. And the standard protocol that I follow, there are two things that I follow. The question paper that I set, okay, I first solve it myself. Okay. Whatever time it takes me to solve the paper, I multiply it by 5 and assign the class time. You are given a full 1 hour of class time, which means you should know that I have been able to solve it within 20 minutes. In fact, far lesser than that. That's number one. Number two, you will not find any problem in the test which will take you long computations. I absolutely hate it, right? So none of the computations, whatever computations you are required to do in the test, none of those computations are long. Number three, it's an MCQ, but please do not try to guess because your probability of failure is high, will be high because the way I set the MCQ, I set the multiple choices. So you need to work out the solutions to the problem, apply your mind, focus on the basics, okay? Purely focus on the basics. Go through my notes, go through the whiteboard that I have shared with you, watch the video lectures, and also go through the summary sheet. One other thing that I'm going to tell you, and just because I'm feeling generous today, is that don't worry about singular value decomposition or principal component analysis. I'm not going to ask anything from either of these. Okay, all right. So I guess unless you don't have any questions, let's call it a day. No, Amandeep, none of these vectors are trivial vectors. Both are non-zero. Okay. So unless you have any more questions, yeah. Go ahead.
Are we expected to know things like converting into row echelon form and finding the basis of a matrix or rank of a matrix?
No. See, I have solved one example in class, right? Okay, so I mean that comes from the rank analytic theorem. So if you are asked to, I mean, if you are required to find the dimension of the null space of T, right? And that there is an easy way to do that. I mean, you really do not need to do any row echelon form. Don't worry about it. Okay, and even if you are required to do a row echelon form, the matrix that will be given to you will be a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Does that make you feel any better? It will be a 2 by 2. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So don't worry. Trust me when I say this. I mean, don't worry about computation part of the exam. Focus on the basics. Amandeep, I don't know how you are reading this, right? I mean, but the way it is that W and Z both are non-trivial. That's the assumption.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Sir, in the previous solution itself that you did, T times W comma Z takes us to minus Z comma W something, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah. So here W comma Z cannot be 0 vector. That's all the condition should hold, right? So W and Z both together cannot be 0.
Right.
Yeah. So one of them could still be 0, right? So W times Z could lead us to 0.
Yeah, but like the thing is, no. Okay. Now think about this. These W and Z are scalars, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look at these W and Z individually, these are scalars. Okay.
Yes.
Now in a group theoretic setting, there is a possibility that one of the two elements is non-zero and still the product is 0. Okay. But there those group elements are different. Those are not scalars. Now when you say that W and Z together, I mean this is a non-zero vector. I mean how can the product cannot be 0? That's the whole point. Right? So individually it could be 0, but the product cannot be 0. But that does not really apply when you are talking about scalars, right? So do you know of any scalar where unless one of the scalars is a 0, right? I mean, it doesn't really work. But yes, I get your point that the ordered pair W comma Z is a non-zero vector.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Let's call it a day. I'll see you on Friday during the class time. Don't be late.
Sir, I had one doubt.
Yeah, you have some background noise.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the syllabus that you have uploaded, in the 5th chapter, there is this proposition that I did not understand. So I don't recall
Which one?
if you've covered it. The one
In
about
chapter.
distinct eigenvalues means that T will be T of B will be diagonal. That's what I understood from it.
Right. I mean, don't worry about it, because see, there are only 4 pages in chapter 5.
Mhm.
Okay, so if I open up chapter 5, I have it open here right now. So let me just go up. Okay, so
Yeah. Page number 88, I think. Yeah, page number 88, 5.20 proposition. Uh, 88 according to the book.
chapter 5, right?
Yeah. 5.20 proposition.
No, that is not part, because you just have to see the page numbers are annotated. Okay, I see your confusion. See, the page numbers are annotated accordingly what you see here.
Right. That's the confusion then. Okay. Then it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And sir, what platform will the exam be on? Like Google Forms or something?
Yeah, it's a Google form. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Good luck. See you on Friday.